My feelings about Pattinson in this role have not changed, but it was still a pretty good movie. This afternoon, I went to go see The Batman. I went to the very first showtime that was made available at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I bought the tickets the day they went on sale. I was wondering, I was kind of comparing it in my mind to when the Spider-Man No Way Home tickets went on sale. And there was really not much of a comparison, to be honest. The Spider-Man No Way Home, when the tickets for Spider-Man No Way Home went on sale, it crashed the movie sites. And by the time I was able to get in to get a ticket for the 3 p.m. showing, almost all of the seats were sold out. This was not the case with Batman. I don't know if any theater ended up selling out. Maybe some of the later showtimes had possibly 1 or 2 seats left, but there was quite a difference between the reaction to Batman compared to Spider-Man No Way Home with regard to ticket sales. I think it's going to have a pretty solid performance, but I don't think it's going to be as just huge as No Way Home is. I don't know how much of that is just because of the movie itself, or if it's because maybe Batman isn't as popular of a superhero comic book type movie as Spider-Man is, or maybe the runtime, because this is a long movie. I've touched on that a little bit in my out of the theater reaction. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I think it will do okay. I just don't think it's going to be wildly huge or anything like that. But whatever, there's not a lot of competition throughout this month and leading into April. So I think it's probably going to have a pretty good run. We'll see. That was kind of a long-winded way to start this off. Sorry about that. But these are different things that I was thinking about when I was processing my thoughts. So the movie, I did enjoy it. It was, I liked the way it was crafted. It was this mystery story. Batman is very detective-y in this movie, and he and Detective Gordon, they're trying to solve the mystery of the Riddler, and so there is a lot of that going on. There's not a ton of action because a lot of this is just focused on the story, the different characters, the plot, and the corruption going on, and who's doing what, and all of this stuff, and also character drama stuff that's going on, because you had to do it at least once. Okay, all right. So that stuff I already said. Plus, I was taking notes while I was watching it, just thoughts as they came to me. One of the first things I wrote down was that it has an unsettling opening. It's the Riddler is watching his target, and he's got his mask on, and you can hear this very heavy breathing, and it was creepy. It reminded me quite a bit of the Michael Myers mask breathing. I mean, it was creepy. And the death scene that happens in the beginning, and he kills a lot of people. Riddler does. I mean, he is a serial killer. His killings, though, are motivated. It's not like he's just randomly killing people, or he's only killing people because he's fixated on certain physical appearances or whatever. There's a reason for his killing. So I don't know, does that really classify as serial killer? But whatever. And so Batman and Detective Gordon, they're investigating. Batman has been doing his thing for about 2 years. He's still pretty new into the whole vigilante stuff. And he's very broody. He's very mopey. He's a man of few words, which is probably, in the case of Robert Pattinson, a good thing, because the less he talked, the more I didn't mind his, his persona as Batman. I felt like he was definitely better in the suit because his face is all covered up. He's in this huge, suit, and the suit's very tough and it's like bulletproof. I mean, he's just practically unshootable. And he's got all these cool gear, the thing on his chest doubles as like a knife, and he's got interesting tech. What tech was one of the things I wrote down. Stuff I'd never seen before in a Batman movie as far as some of the tech goes. It had to do with I'm not gonna mention the specific stuff, but the tech is cool. The Batmobile is cool. I like the Batmobile. Is very much a muscle car. That chase scene was crazy, pretty intense. The chase scene with Penguin, and so there's action, but it's not overwhelmed with action. And I didn't mind that because I don't necessarily like superhero movies to be just full of nonstop action. I really like the character stuff. That's what pulls me into things like that. I don't mind that this Batman was very, very dark and very broody, and the gloomy atmosphere and the noirish feel to everything. I didn't mind that at all. I know that has been sort of a complaint of some of the official critics. That's not an issue for me. It matches Batman because he's not like this happy, funny, highly comedic superhero. He's very complex, he's very dark, and he's very troubled. And so the atmosphere matches what Batman should be, in my opinion. So that wasn't an issue at all. Let's see, I've gone through that already. Oh yeah, the score was really good. I liked the theme, the Batman theme. Actually, when I was watching the trailer, I was thinking, that theme, boom, 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 like that. I was like, that reminds me of the Darth Vader theme, like the Imperial March. It's like, wait, I can't be the only one. And I saw some discussion that other people were picking up on that, which I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like just this very heavy, deep, like boomy type of sort of theme for him. And then, of course, you hear threads of that Nirvana song that played in the trailer, just this sort of gloomy, oppressive type of score, and I thought it was done very well. I really enjoyed the cinematography. I liked how the director, I think his name is Matt Reeves, and I'm familiar with some of his other work. I can't tell you now off the top of my head what he's done, but I do remember looking him up when I was first researching who was directing this. And I recognized the titles, and I was like, oh, those are actually pretty decently done films. I think this film is going to be good. I'm just not thrilled about Pattinson as Batman. I'm still not thrilled about him in this role. He is not convincing to me. He's okay. He doesn't totally screw it up, but he just does not, for me, he does not have the presence. He doesn't have the magnetism. He just doesn't have the look. And especially when he's in Bruce Wayne form, it's not, when he's in the suit, like I said, it's kind of covering up a lot of stuff. The suit itself is very, it's ominous, it's threatening, it's scary, the suit, so that helps. But it just doesn't, for me. I think Bale will always be my favorite Batman, my favorite Bruce Wayne. I know a lot of people love Ben Affleck. I was never really super thrilled with Affleck as Affleck. Yeah, with Affleck. I keep calling him that Affleck. He never really won me over completely. I didn't horribly mind him, but I just was like, he's okay. But anyway, So there's that, the score. And like I said, the cinematography. What I was starting to say before I got distracted by talking about the director was that I like how he allowed the scenes to breathe. He let things take their time on the screen. There wasn't a lot of rushed editing. Obviously, at nearly 3 hours long, there's not going to be a lot of rushed cuts and edits and stuff like that. And really would linger on certain shots, but not to the point that it felt obnoxious. Not like Green Knight, but just so that you were just really sort of enveloped in this mood and what was happening. And there's a scene where someone is viewing Batman approaching them and they're upside down, and so he's approaching you upside down, and then he kneels down, and you can see what he looks like to the person that's upside down, how he looks when he's looking in upon him. Which is, I thought that was really well done. I like that a lot. So I'm kind of going to go through the positives first before I start to touch on, I've already touched on some of the negatives, but I want to just open this up with positivity. For Batman himself, the character, and also for Bruce Wayne, he doesn't have a lot of dialogue. I've talked about this already. I mean, it's not that he's completely silent, but he's not super chatty. And when he talks, a lot of it is one-liners. And I think that also helped Pattinson in a way. There was a time in the trailer where it showed him yelling and hitting a glass wall when he's talking to a bad guy in the trailer. And that was, to me, that was kind of cringy, because I was just like, I'm just not buying it. It's just not working. That scene, again, did not work. There were scenes where he pulled it off better than others. He was pretty good with the fighting choreography and stuff like that. Some of the fight scenes felt like sometimes they got a little bit bogged down, but for the most part, they were carried off pretty well. I liked scenes of him using his grappling hook and swinging, like being zipped up and jumping down. There was a scene where he's running down a beam. He's attached to the hook or whatever, and he's running down the beam. I like how that was shot, how that was carried off. I like I said already, the chase scene. I loved his tech. It was really neat. He had a lot of computer stuff that he would work with too when he would go into his bat cave, which wasn't really a cave. It was another type of place, but it was underground. And so those were all bonuses, not bonuses, those were all pluses for me. Also, I recognized some characters that they played bouncers at this club for like the mobsters. I think those two guys, they were twins. I think those two were the same dudes who played in Teen Wolf. I wrote that down. Twins from Teen Wolf. From the Teen Wolf from MTV, the series. There were slight moments of humor, despite this film being overwhelmingly very dark and oppressive and ominous and gloomy and noirish and rainy. There was a lot of rain. There were sometimes moments of humor, but they were tiny little glimmers. It wasn't anything that happened often. And so when it happened, sometimes if you weren't really in tune or plugged in to what was going on, maybe you'd miss it. It was just like little, I'll give you an example. It's not spoilery because I'm going to stay away from spoilers. Anyway, there was this one scene where Batman is handling a piece of evidence. It's like a book or something, maybe. I think that's what it was. And the police in the room, because he would just show up and come in and parade through, and because he was working with Gordon. Gordon had, he's kind of like his pass into the crime scenes. And he's handling this book, and one of the policemen was complaining to Gordon about it. And Gordon said something like, well, he's got gloves or something like that, because Batman has his gloves. That's an example of what I'm talking about when I say humor. It was very muted, wasn't super ha 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 ha, not like that little dialogue between Catwoman and Batman sometimes had little tiny threads of humor, but it was just overall a very serious film. Yeah, not lighthearted at all. Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Holy cow, you guys. I would never know that was him if I didn't know it was him. He was unrecognizable underneath that makeup. Think the excellent job that was done on Gary Oldman in Churchill. It was so good. I was just amazed. He obviously didn't look like himself. He also didn't sound like himself. His actions, his physical movements, because he's kind of like this big, he's like one of the gangster types. And he's called Penguin because he has like kind of a gimpy walk. But there was a moment where he actually does walk like a penguin. You'll know it when you see it. That was one of the other little kind of funny moments that happened in the movie. So yeah, but he did a really, really good job. Also, something else I liked, and this ties back to the cinematography. There were times when the Riddler was doing some pretty horrific things to people. And you would see the action, you knew what was happening, but the way it was done is that it was happening in the background and the camera was only focused on whatever in the foreground. You could see these shapes moving, these things going on in the background. You could hear the noises of the people that he was assaulting or doing whatever, but it was all blurred out. You could make out the forms, you knew what was going on, but you weren't seeing it explicitly. You weren't seeing a bunch of blood flying. You weren't seeing when he was taping somebody's mouth shut. You knew it was going on, but it was just, I thought that was really clever, and I liked that. I like that little artistic touch. There was one time when something that Batman, coming back around to like his tech, stuff related to his suit when he's gliding through the air. I guess if you want to get technical, the type of glider that he was using that was built into his suit, that was the best type to be using because that would most feasibly work as a glider. It just looked kind of lame. I didn't like it at all. I almost laughed when I saw it because it didn't look so good. Okay, so I've already talked about Colin walking like a penguin. What else? Oh, something else that was a this movie, while there's an attraction going on with Catwoman and Batman because that's just the way it is. That's the whole deal. It didn't get bogged down in it. And while Catwoman was her Catwoman self in a lot of ways, she also wasn't. She didn't rub me quite as wrong, or not wrong. Yeah. She didn't rub me as wrong as I thought she would. Catwoman has not necessarily been one of my favorite of the Batman villains. It's kind of hard to classify her purely as a villain because she and Batman are in this relationship. They end up, they have a kid, the Huntress, whatever, all that. But Catwoman has always kind of annoyed me because I've always felt like Batman has been pretty stupid about her. Like he doesn't use his head. He trusts her too much, and then she would backstab him and do all these things. She's not quite like that in here. Really? I'm trying to think if there's a moment where she does backstabby awful stuff to him. That's not the case. They pretty much work together. She's not conniving or anything. You can understand why she's doing some of the stuff she's doing. She's not just like this thief who just wants to steal from rich people just for the hell of it. There's purpose in her actions, and you can oh shoot, I totally forgot to make the slideshow go. Oh, sorry about that. I got so carried into just heading straight into my review that I completely forgot to start the slideshow. Gosh, that's terrible. What was I saying? Oh, about Catwoman. It wasn't Catwoman and Batman. While there was this attraction between them, it didn't get bogged down in that. That wasn't like a huge factor, and I appreciated that because it would have served as kind of a distraction, too much of a distraction for Batman, and that's not really how it was woven together. And so I like that a lot. And like I was saying about Catwoman, her character didn't really rub me wrong like I was thinking that she might would. I remember noticing in the trailers, like, Zoe, she looks like she's trying too hard to be all uber sexy, and the way she's walking and her fierce look and everything. But when you're watching the movie, these particular scenes where she's looking this way, it's like she changes her personality depending on the situation she's in. When it's just her and Batman together and they're talking, she's not necessarily like that. Their interactions are interesting to watch. I like the dynamic between them, and it just doesn't go overboard with her being all, you know, that sort of thing. And so that was a plus. But tying into that is a con that I had just been writing down. Selina's story, this is what I was writing down in my notes. Selina's story, a question mark, because they did something with her character that I'm not sure if that's the way it is in the comics, but I might be wrong. I'm not going to say what it is, but I thought it was an interesting twist. And I was just, thinking to myself, I'm not minding her character too much. I understand where she's coming from. And then out of her mouth comes something that I totally didn't appreciate. And this is where I got the first hints, or where I started to pick up on little whiffs of wokeism coming into this movie. And that was the first real big clue. She made some sort of comment about privileged white guys. It's like she had to bring race into it. I don't think that's cool at all. I feel like a lot of times the more people harp on things about race, the worse things can get because of that. And in reality, what was going on with the people that she was complaining about had nothing to do with their race. They were corrupt. Anybody can be corrupt. It's not a race-based thing. And so I didn't appreciate that. And I really wish they had just struck that line from the screenplay, because then it made me just like had just been thinking, I like her character. And then she says this and I'm like, girl, I wish you had not said that, because now you're not cool anymore. I don't care at all for your mindset when it comes to stuff like that. And then also I was noticing that of all the bad guys, like all the bad guys in here, all the corrupt cops, the corrupt political people and people in the Justice Department or whatever, they're all white. So I definitely feel like there were these elements woven in that probably would have been better off if they had just kind of not included that sort of thing, because it left a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't appreciate it, and the movie would have been just fine without it. We would have understood the basic theme, the corruption and the seediness of Gotham, the crime, and you didn't have to add these elements in there that really don't necessarily have anything to do with why people are doing these things. It's just they're in these positions of power, they become corrupted, and that's the root of the problem right there. So there was that. And I'm starting to delve now into the cons. One of the other cons is that I feel like we could have done with more Alfred. We didn't have enough of him. I felt like Andy Serkis was a great pick for the role, but he just wasn't around enough. And I wish we had had more of him. Another thing, the Riddler. So initially, the Riddler, he's very creepy, very sinister. He's got this mask on, he does these videos, and he is creepy. And his voice and the way he talks, it's like, you're creepy. You are a sufficiently, that's the scene I was telling you about the cinematography and him upside down. Okay. And I was like, I like that we get this. We don't often get the Riddler. I mean, he's one of the main villains, but usually, when you think of Batman, you think of Joker, right? Batman and Joker, Batman and Catwoman. You know of Riddler, but he's not always present. And I felt like they did a really good job with making him this menacing type of adversary for Batman, scary guy. And then when he becomes unmasked, he is completely underwhelming. And I felt like the actor, I think his name is Paul Dano. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything before, and if I have, I just didn't notice him. He was not effective, in my opinion, when they were having Batman and Riddler were having this face-to-face. Riddler's been unmasked. And his performance in that scene, it was almost cringy, because I felt like he was trying too hard to match the type of presence that Heath Ledger had in The Dark Knight, which, I'm sorry, I don't think anyone can beat. It's just hands down, Heath Ledger's performance as Joker in The Dark Knight is one of the best, if not the best, villain portrayals in a Batman movie. He was fantastic in that role, and so far nobody has beaten him. Okay, there's Joaquin, right? But there was really no Batman in that story, so I'm not really counting that. I'm talking about when there's Batman and a villain. But the guy who played Riddler, it was almost cringy, his performance in that particular scene where he's unmasked and they're having this face-to-face, and it ends up with Batman yelling at him or whatever, and because, oh no, he's done something and Batman's helpless because he can't figure out what it is, and it's just like it didn't work. It was around that time when I started to feel like the story was sort of petering out, as I described it in my out of the theater reaction. That was probably about 30 some minutes before the movie was over, 25 to 30 minutes or so before the movie was over. And it was from that point on that I just kind of felt like the movie was going on a bit longer than it needed to. I honestly feel like probably 15 minutes could have been trimmed off of this movie easily. And the final sort of finale, climax sort of thing, it was underwhelming as well. I didn't feel, it didn't feel as emotionally impactful to me as, like, let's say, the climax of The Dark Knight, what was going on there. I just didn't have this huge sense of just, oh, this is just awful, and oh my God, I think by that point I had kind of become disconnected from the story. And so, like, the first part of the movie, the first 2 hours, pretty good. 2 hours plus. And then, around that part that I was telling you about, and towards the end, I was just like, it's feeling kind of long, and it's just not I'm not feeling that sense of urgency and danger, even though there's stuff is going on. But I just had sort of lost, I just had almost lost interest in whatever was going on at that point. So, things like that. I mean, it certainly wasn't anything that ruined the whole movie for me, but these were just things that I was noticing that were kind of starting to add up in the con territory. And that's pretty much, I think I've covered everything as far as like the pros, the cons. There were two things I was going to mention in closing-ish. There is the hint of another villain at the end. I won't tell you who it is, but you're going to know exactly who it is as soon as they start talking and you see a very small glimpse of them. And also, there are no scenes during the credits or even after the credits. So if you want to take off, as soon as the credits start rolling, you can, unless you want to sit there and enjoy the score that plays during the credits. There's my thoughts on the Batman. I went on quite a while. I had a feeling I would. I had a bunch of notes I took. And I initially, when Robert Pattinson had been cast, I was really down on him. Like I said, I really haven't changed my opinion very much at all as far as him in the role. But I started to feel like this is going to be a movie where I enjoy the story, but not really, but I'm not really thrilled about the lead role, the casting of the lead role, and that remains the same here. I've also mentioned other stuff when I was watching the other trailers about some of the, you know, the race swapping that was done in here. I could do without that. I really don't, I'm not a fan of that sort of thing at all. But with regard to the story itself, I thought it was pretty well constructed. A lot of detail in the plot, a lot of characters, and a lot of twists and turns that I think most people will appreciate, especially if you like things like detective type stories. My brother specifically told me that one of the reasons he was really looking forward to this movie is because this is like one of the first times we see Batman being, you know, a detective, like how he's supposed to be. And that is the case. There is a lot of investigation that he does, and a lot of crime scenes that he's analyzing, and riddles he's solving, and the stuff he's doing on his computer, and the tech he's using to figure out things and study things. And so I thought that was really well done. And you know, despite the fact that I feel like this movie goes on longer than it really needs to, I still enjoyed it. It's not a con enough to make me feel like I don't ever want to see it again, or, you know, there wasn't really anything about this film that I disliked to the point that I would never want to watch it again. The oppressive and gloomy nature of it, like I said, did not bother me. I like that. I like my Batmen to be serious and dark and troubled. I like that. Just unfortunately don't feel like Pattinson. I mean, he's got the emo look down, you know, when he's Bruce Wayne, but he just still doesn't really quite capture what I want in a Batman. Someone made a comment on my out of the theater reaction that they feel like that Batman has been one of those roles that's the most, like, people are the most picky about what they want their Batman to be like. And maybe that's the case, I guess. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's such a beloved character, or if it's because he's such an interesting and complex character. He doesn't have any superpowers, but he's still one of the most fascinating superhero characters for me. I think if I had to compare Spider-Man and Batman, I would prefer to watch a Batman movie, because I just like the whole nature of his story and his backstory. They do talk about, you know, what happened to his mom and dad, and you see him being he's reminded of his childhood when he encounters another child who's lost a parent. You can see how that affects him. And so there's just something about his character that I've always liked. I like Spider-Man too, but Spider-Man feels so much more lighthearted, you know, and Batman just much more, I don't know, there's just something about the intensity and the darkness that's in the character of Batman that has resonated more with me than, like, let's say, Spider-Man. I don't mind Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man just fine, but I'm more drawn to the character of Batman. And so I initially thought I probably wasn't even going to go watch this film, but then I was like, well, I'll do it so I can review it for the channel, and also because maybe the story itself will actually be worth watching. And I feel like it was, and I think most fans of Batman will feel the same. I think this is going to be overwhelmingly positive for most people. Even if you're still not crazy about Pattinson like me, you'll probably still appreciate the plot, the story, and how it's all woven together. So there's my long and rambly thoughts about the Batman, and I guess I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Let me know what you guys think about it whenever you get a chance to check it out. And yeah, that's it, you guys. Later.